At first, I was going to say, Miss Motivation, that you misdiagnosed again through a keyboard. After I advised you not to do something like that in my last video to you. And I stand by the idea, the point. But let me start by saying that I'm going to take responsibility for what I did wrong. When I heard myself, when I listened to the recording after I had already published it, and I heard myself describe my kid's complexion, it may have sounded like I hated the light skin of my daughters, when in fact I don't. And that's due to my own oversight and how I sounded. I said that I accidentally had light-skinned daughters. Okay, I didn't clarify this. Their shade wasn't the accident. The accidents were the times of their conceptions. Simply put, I didn't plan any of my kids. Now, I still share responsibility with the moms, but I wasn't planning them. So that's why I refer to the timing of their conceptions as accidents. I still would have wanted to have them, just under different circumstances. So, for the impression that I didn't want my kids, I apologize for how I sounded. But the truth is that I always loved my kids, and before them, I loved kids in general, all shades. They're kids. And I love the ones that were related to me the most. I never had a mindset to not love my kids or to not love kids in general, because kids are just kids. And adult males do have paternal instincts and compassion for children naturally, like women do. Most of us do like kids, even if we don't hug them much and we're not dangerous to them. Now, I could do another recording about this, because some are going to say, wait a minute, it's always guys out there hurting kids. That's not true. But I would say this: men do get triggered if they're boxed into one option. And that is, if a man is told or shown that he can only raise other men's kids, but he's not good enough to have and raise his own, he will get triggered. But if he's smart, he'll take it out on the woman that's sending that message, not on the kids. That's another recording, like I said. I never had the mindset to hate myself for something I can't control, let alone to hate a child for something they inherit from their parents. I'll be honest, I don't like the white society. I've met half-white people all the time. I have nothing against them because of the society from which their white parents come. I don't necessarily dislike their white parents all the time as individuals. I'll take them as they come as an individual. But would I walk into a scenario that is all white and I'm the only black person there? Absolutely not. I'm not that stupid. That's another recording too, I guess. But the point I'm getting at is that I can't blame someone for something other than bad moral choices that they make. And that extends to myself. I'm not even capable fully of understanding how it is that people can have a self-esteem issue or a self-hatred issue unless they are convinced to feel guilty about something. And even then, I'm not sure how you convince people. I haven't learned yet how you convince people to feel guilty about something over which they didn't have control. Now, I said the words, fortunately, my son came out in the middle, in exactly those same words. I use the word fortunately, thinking of the convenience of it, but not thinking of some superiority or inferiority. Again, I worded that wrong. I'm sorry about that. And I mean that from the bottom of my black heart. I am sorry about that. I worded it like I did. That's on me. That's my error. I only ask that you and your commentators and supporters consider the fact that it's an honest mistake and an oversight, very stupid of me, but still unintentional. Because I don't multitask very well and I don't write down what I say before I say it. So that's on me. Now that I've gotten that out the way, hopefully, I'm not going to go in on Miss Philosophier. I'm not going to go in on you, Miss Lightskin Motivation. And I'm not even going to go in on Smiles and a Twisted MD, who recommended that my kids be taken away from me, despite the fact that I don't have self-hatred or self-esteem issues and I'm not abusive to any kids, especially my own. To suggest what she suggested is outrageous, but because she's talking in the interest of my daughters, and I believe in the interest of my daughters and son, I'm going to assume that we're actually on the same side and she just didn't know that. So I'm not going in on her. I want what's best for my kids, like she does, actually. I want what's best for even your kids, whoever you are listening to me now, and even for your nieces and nephews. But listen, ladies, I want to clear something up for you. I never had an issue with my phenotype, and I don't have one now. I admit that I had issues with the reactions that got me in my youth, but I never felt inferior or superior. And I will still never forgive that same worst enemy I told you about in my hometown. Because that same guy that I defended when people started to speculate he was gay and there was no evidence, I will never forgive because he singled me out. And that's how bad it is to be singled out. It drives people crazy. The black community is angry with every other race because we feel that we've been singled out. And in most cases, we were singled out for the worst treatment and the most disrespect. Not every single time, but in most cases, the exceptions are very rare. An example of the rule and not the exception would be those subhuman chinks in Guangzhou singling out Africans and kicking them out of everywhere, making them homeless. I don't call them subhuman chinks because I'm a racist. I call them subhuman chinks because they're racist. I have no problem with their DNA, and I got no problem with the epicanthal fold that shapes the eyelids of the people in that region. I think actually that's a cute trait to have, just like many other traits are. My issue with them is that they're anti-black and pro-white, despite the fact that the British and the Americans did all this harm to them, effed up their empire, put it to an end, forced opium on them with gunpowder, which ironically was their invention, that they didn't militarize for more than 40 years and then abandon. So to make a long story short, it was the British and the Americans that really did them wrong and messed them over. And they're going to turn around, exonerate the white man that they first named white devil, and then start blaming us. That's why I call them subhuman. We have every right to hate whoever sides against us and with white people. And as a matter of fact, this should be understood. So I wanted my kids to not be singled out. That's not abnormal to want that. It's abnormal when someone singles people out. I would have been willing to take being singled out if it meant my kids would not. I would have been willing to take being singled out if it would rescue you from that. But you can't blame me for having issues with the reaction. Let's take a woman that's raped as an example. If she hates you and singles you out for mistreatment because she thinks you're related to the rapist, you would defend yourself, sure, but you wouldn't blame her per se because you would understand she's traumatized. She is exactly what black folks are told to say that we are not, which is victims. You blame the rapist, even if he was related to you. So when I looked at how I was mistreated, I had to admit it was a minority of black folks that did this, not anywhere near a majority. And even with this minority, I saw that it was from trauma, and I knew where the trauma began. Now, we perpetuate it, but white supremacy started it. You may not like me saying that, or you may not care, you may agree. But I know from studying history that white supremacy started it. When I was in middle school and the first half of high school, I blamed white supremacy for it. Because that's all I knew at that time. I also blamed the bias that darker skinned people faced from a few families and even from their own same shaded peers on white supremacy. It was at the end of high school that I said, wait, I'm too old for this crap, and so are they. They know better. So I understood that white supremacy and the trauma thereof was a cause of this, but I no longer accepted it as an excuse because they were old enough to know better. Again, what I dealt with was not self-hate, it was self-preservation. Keep in mind that my mate selection was not even based on that. Now, at the time, it was based on what I knew. But you have to also keep in mind that at that time, I didn't date. I wasn't successful enough with the women to date. And later on, I found out it was also, again, because of my phenotype. See, I didn't even know until a month and a few weeks ago that any light-skinned black women in the USA with education could prefer and admit to preferring a light-skinned man, because I didn't know about your channel. Izzy was the one that had the channel last time, and she had a white dude. So to me, I was like, yeah, I mean, I didn't even have to think about it consciously. I just assumed from the evidence, light-skinned men aren't what they want. They want either chocolate brother, and if they don't want that, then they want a straight-up white guy. We're too much in the middle, so we're not neither one or the other, so they don't really prefer us, and they don't hate us per se. I didn't think that light-skinned women hated light-skinned black men. I thought they just didn't prefer them. That's all. Most light-skinned black men thought that light-skinned black women just did not prefer us, not necessarily hating us. So I know now what I did not know a month and a few weeks ago. Now, as for my pro-blackness, despite what I went through, it was still well justified, and I'll tell you why it's justified. And thanks for being patient with me. You see, the ones that hate our phenotype were rare. It doesn't seem like it, I know, but they were if we think about it. See, most of us actually thought that kind of stuff was childish. The jokes were all around, but look at who actually hated us and treated us with hatred, and you would see that they weren't very much in number. What it was repetition. But the repetition did not come from most people. Even in my own experience, there were many, many more black people that were just more reserved with me when they met me, if they did not know me, because they just didn't trust me, but they didn't mean me any harm. And they were guarded. And when they knew me better, they took me as I came when they realized I had no bias against them, and then we were able to get along okay. See, this is a guarded reaction, not a hostile one. This was the common one, just guarded. And they realized I don't mean any harm. Okay, it's cool. People who treated me differently weren't even always conscious of themselves doing it. And they didn't even always hate light-skinned people. A lot of times with no hatred, they just simply thought that we were easier targets. So without hatred, they would think I can disrespect this dude, raise my voice, and then, of course, I would still respond. After a certain age, I still responded with violence. If I saw that I was being mistreated in ways that other people weren't, he didn't have to be conscious of it. I'd call him on it and hit him. It didn't have to happen too many times, though. I would do this even to the point of trying to cripple some people, despite the fact that you might think that I thought their complexion was superior to my own. I never thought that. As for media representation, it does matter, to a certain extent. But the thing is, see, we men are conditioned to worry about reality more than TV, as Barani Moon said in her comments, and I want to give a shout out to her. She said the right thing in the comments. If that's that big a deal, just turn off the TV. Men in general do have a concern about media representation, but it's a limited one. But see, on one hand, Kid was always more straight-laced in play in those movies. But on the flip side, Will Smith was from the streets of West Philly, and Carlton Banks was the Oreo cookie with no black cultural references, as the stereotype was concerned. So in reality, media representation had an importance, but a limited one. And this was something to notice, but there was still bigger fish to fry. On one hand, Kareem Akbar, the character played by Christopher Williams, got stabbed through the hand by Nino Brown on that movie New Jack City. That did happen. This was a big deal for a lot of people. And I predicted it a few seconds before. When I saw Nino Brown, or rather Wesley Snipes, reach for that sword, I predicted he was going to stab Kareem Akbar through the hand. But see, I said it was because Kareem Akbar was more bookish. He was an accountant. I was not allowed to think growing up that it was because he was light-skinned. That's another story, but the main thing I'm getting at here is that, and I also predicted it because in the summer before my 5th grade year, I was playing in my father's hometown with a bunch of us, and this was an all-black neighborhood. One of them was upset because his girlfriend had just broken up with him. He grabbed me and choked me in his frustration. I had nothing to do with it. I was shocked. I actually saw him looking at me with a look of anger before I felt his hands around my throat. But then as soon as I realized what was going on, everybody separated us and they roughed him up. And we were all black. One got out of hand, everybody roughed him up because he was out of line. So if I examine this numerically, the bottom line is that most black folks, and this is at a young age in elementary school, most black folks aren't going to do what this guy did. His name was Chester, by the way. Chester was the anomaly, not the others. I didn't understand why he chose me. I didn't get it at the time. Now I do understand. But most of them were not along with that program, you understand? Even though they were friends of his. Even though they all lived in that neighborhood and I was just visiting, they still sided against him. So he was the outlier. So subconsciously, I could still understand that and then remember the lesson. And then I saw him grab the sword in New Jack City and I said he's going to stab Kareem Akbar through the hand, and he did. But even in that movie, as well as in reality, Kareem Akbar had one enemy, and that was Nino. Now, he said, I never liked you anyway with your pretty self. And then I started to wonder, what did he mean by pretty? Because I didn't know what that meant when you applied it to a man. I hadn't heard about that before. I didn't know what pretty meant. I'd heard of pretty boy, but I didn't know what a pretty boy actually was. So he stabbed him through the hand. And then said, I never liked you anyway with your pretty self. And I was like, what? Wait. I thought it was because he was an accountant. What happened? What does he mean pretty? Because you see, to me, Nino Brown was wearing more expensive clothing than Kareem Akbar. So I didn't understand it. I was never trained to think of light-skinned guys as pretty boys, so I didn't assume that Christopher Williams was better looking than Wesley Snipes because they're both actors. Now, in real life and in the movie, the Chester and Nino Brown are not everyone and they're not everywhere. The issue, and you're right about this, the issue is that when they do come out, they seem to have no limits. You don't know where they're going to come from next, and you don't know what their limits are and how far they're going to go. That is your valid point and your valid concern. And we do have every right to start teaching self-defense against them and to not let them use guilt to stop our self-defense instinct. So I'm simply trying to put this whole colorism thing into perspective, neither overestimating nor underestimating it. That's all. And what that means is that I have to know its root among our people. And I'm going to tell you, its root among our people is actually white folks and white supremacy. So if I wasn't pro-black, I would have to be even more anti-white, because if the entire black community was your enemy and mine because of our phenotype, then it would be because the international false religion of white supremacy was even more successful with even less resistance from the current reality. Now I'll explain briefly what I mean. I studied history, then I taught it. And I learned that white supremacy did not start with white people from Europe. It started with Persians and Afghans that were at that time were called Arya, or their land was called Arya, and it's on both sides of the border between Iran and Afghanistan today, the modern day border between them. But back then it was on both sides of today's border. And an Afghan colleague of mine that I work with confirmed this for me. He confirmed for me that actually white folks got the idea of whiteness and white supremacy from them. He told me about that. So anyway, it was white folks, as we know them today, that took it to a whole new level. So without the Western European white uncivilization, the Arabs, Afghans, Persians, Indians, and Pakistanis would have this colorism issue, but we Africans would not. We got it from white folk. Africa has so many complexions, even without admixture from outside, that colorism would be stupid for us in our normal natural state. So yes, I don't just think that this issue was other people's fault in its beginning. I know it is, and that's why I'm pro-black. But understand this, and keep this in mind, like I said, I'm authentically pro-black. My pro-blackness does not extend to niggers, jigaboos, porch monkeys, spear chuckers, Tarzan chasers, jungle bunnies, or any other negative stereotype of us that started in the minds of white folks. Those of us who bring these negative stereotypes to life, try to make them true, are not the ones I include. And I don't care, once they hit puberty and they act like this, I consider them enemies. We need to feed them to the Ku Klux Klan to preserve our ranks. The problem is that we would have to feed some of our own relatives to them. So when you just, now, that's what I wanted to get out, and I just wanted to clarify that with no hatred. Just wanted to clarify that what it means that I'm pro-black. Why am I pro-black even though I had to go through this? Because most of my people were not the problem. Most of us were brainwashed in one way, form, or fashion, but most of us were not the problem. That's why. A very vicious minority of us were. And I'm all for purging them, actually. Instead of us forming another community, I'm all for us actually kicking them out. Now, to finish this off, when you discuss men and women, that's a different matter altogether. That goes into red pill territory. That's not about hating women. There are new red pill guys that do hate women, but they're new. And usually it's because of what they were lied to about when they were young. But red pill in general is not about hating women, but it is about taking absolutely no crap off of women at all. In order to not take crap off of them, you generally have to leave Western women alone. If you're not part of that problem, don't take offense, but I'm just explaining to you what you've been dealing with. Even from me, yes, I'm a red pill man. No, I don't hate women. No, I don't even hate Western women. No, I will not give a Western woman another chance in my life until the Western culture changes, and that's self-preservation again, not self-hate, nor hatred of them. The bottom line is Western women are too hard to please. It's not the men, it's not the deficiencies in the men. We men are a mixed bag. Western women, for the most part, are not. there are exceptions that make it a mixture, but the majority of them are one way when it comes to men. Different when it comes to everything else in life, but one way when it comes to the men. Difficult. That's it. White or black, light or dark, Western women are just like that. So if you ask me why a light-skinned woman or any Western woman should have to follow my lead, especially when she's looking for a man of means and when I'm not fighting, the fact is I have fought physically. I lost the ability to feel embarrassment due to taking enough punches to my head. I'm lucky I didn't sustain real true brain damage. But to answer your question, any woman that holds me to the standards of manhood and provision has to follow what I'm talking about. That's just being fair. If I have to pay the cost, I'm supposed to be the boss. End of. Now, if she wants to be if she wants to be the boss, she has to pay the cost. But part of that cost is still going to be bending over my couch and satisfying my loins. Now, I'm only talking about sex in the context of marriage, but that's still going to be required. If she can't do that, then she might as well she might as well step aside. I'll lead. She can help me. I'll look out for her. She still got to bend over the couch. Unfortunately, what's happened is that Western women have been socialized to bring materialism, feminism, and hypergamy as standards. If you're not one of those, don't take offense. But for the most part, this has made Western women impossible to please, even when they find a rich NBA player who's 7 feet tall. And it's not fair that men have to be Superman just for a normal run-of-the-mill woman to be happy, and then even then, she's gonna leave. The other thing that Western black women have done specifically that has driven Western black men away is this whole third eye stuff. And this is what I was talking about before. Please don't try to diagnose mental illness in anybody, man or woman, Western, Eastern, black, white, anything. Please stop trying to diagnose mental illnesses through a keyboard and a screen. It's not going to work. You thought I had self-hatred issues I don't have after I was telling you that you thought I had self-esteem issues I didn't have, and that other men had self-esteem issues they didn't have. So by thinking, and this is not just you, Mrs. Motivation, this is a lot of Western black women specifically. I'm saying this to advise, not out of hatred. Many of them think that they can sit back and read men from a distance without actually knowing the guy up close. What this has led to is exactly what we see. Many of them choosing the worst men and then complaining about the results later because of what they chose. Where was your spiritual third eye at that point? That question's never been answered. But the fact that normal thinking, competent, productive black men who actually do mean well but are unchosen have to go through this is what has driven many of them to Latin America, certain parts of the motherland, and Southeast Asia to seek whatever they find out. If they're seeking prostitution, girlfriends, or wives, these are the regions to which they go. Because in either case, they say they're being treated better than they are in the West. Now, I've said please stop with this whole trying to read brothers and all this mental illness diagnoses through keyboards and screens. I've been saying this for a while. Now that I've said that, I'm gonna close by giving a shout out to Brady Hartsfield. Brady, I made a comment and it was strange in the live chat. In the live stream. I made a comment, then I didn't get to explain it further. I got interrupted. I had to go. Before you made judgment, you asked me about it. So right here, 23 minutes and 20 seconds in, this is timestamp if y'all want to tell her why I'm answering her question. Brady, thank you for asking before you made judgments. That was very balanced of you. Even if you don't agree with what I meant and I'm about to explain it, you still asked first. That's really all I'm asking for. What I meant was that Western women, I was talking in the Western context, Western women, when they're very attractive, because they get so much attention, they do get these big egos. And someone has to bring their self-esteem down again before they'll have sex with anybody. Because most men actually make themselves sexually unattractive by paying too much attention and just oogling over their beauty. And that's what I was getting at. They're put on so high a pedestal that it actually limits the potential to find a sexual partner for them. I know they're still having sex, but in terms of a potential husband and frequent sex, and you get the idea now. Even if you don't agree with me, thanks for asking first. That was balanced. That's all I'm asking for. I also want to give a shout out to Cynthia Pickett, Divine Beauty 2017, and Selecta Ja for listening carefully to what I said and understanding what I was trying to say, and for not reading more into what I did not say, or reading what I did not say into what I said and what I meant. Thank you. If more of us would do this with each other, Even when we disagree, we would learn more from each other. And all of us would be more advanced in picking whatever positions we pick at that point. That's all I was trying to get at. That's it. If you agree or if you disagree, understand this. I'm not the enemy. I have different opinions from many of you, but I'm not the enemy. I don't believe that light-skinned men should throw light-skinned women under the bus, but they should report if what they see is that light-skinned women just have a different preference. And if you think I'm not defending you, the guy Sex and Money that made a comment about death to all light-skinned women, I booted him. Because he is a threat to people based on a phenotype, and that's just as bad. I don't tolerate that. That's not okay. If he were to attack you physically, yes, I actually, even though I don't owe this to any of you, if he were to attack you physically, I would hold him back, and if I had to, he and I would be fighting. Even though I don't owe any of you this, I would do it, just on general principle. Not even because I hate him per se. I'd like to know what the hell he's been through. If he could be helped psychologically, I'd like to see it happen. But in the meantime, the point I'm getting at is that y'all misunderstood. Now that we got that out the way, thanks for listening. I'm glad I was able to keep this under, because the first time I tried to record this, it was 40 minutes and plus. I'm not the enemy. And the last thing I want to tell you, Mrs. Motivation, keep your channel up. Even though I don't agree that we have to run off and form a separate community, I do agree that we have to get rid of the element that's hostile towards us and even towards others of the same shade or of any shade. Any element that is hostile based on any shade is what we really need to get rid of. That's my platform. Maybe that can't be done either. I don't know. But keep your channel up, because there are people that are getting helped by your channel. They're going through it, and your channel helps them out. So no, don't take it down. Don't do that. If someone disagrees with you, that's one thing. If someone outright hates you per se and you don't hate them, that's altogether different. If your channel is not about hatred, keep it up. I'm cool with it. But the reason why I'm in favor of you keeping your channel up is because I am pro-black. You understand? Because I actually am pro-black. I'm not faking it like a lot of these young cats who either don't know or just don't care about authenticity. That's why I want what's good for you. That's why I want what's good for your husband, whatever his shade is, what's good for your baby, whatever your baby shade is. That's why I want what's good for a non-black man, whatever his shade is. Yes, I would have loved to see black folks marry each other. Regardless of shade, I would have loved to see more of us marry each other. I do also understand that because of how a lot of us grow up and get mistreated, many of us aren't able to do it, and I already talked about that years ago. There was a time I thought that if I was going to marry again, it could only be in another region of the world where they're not black. I did think this less than 2 years ago. I'm sorry, a little over 2 years ago. I did think this. But I got lucky. I met my current wife. I'm very happy. She is black. We're both black. She's not a Westerner. But the main thing is, the important thing is that there may be hope for our entire race if we are willing to confront those who are divisive based on any reason that is beyond the control of people. Because if anyone discriminates against any others of us for any reason beyond our control, be it colorism or classism for that matter, they're actually doing the Ku Klux Klan's job for them. And not just the Ku Klux Klan, but the job of any white supremacist they're doing for them. And I'm not for that. I am for you and what you're trying to do to help, because I am pro-black. And I'm also for New Jersey self-defense kicking out the history that he's kicked out, which explains where we are not guilty as a people, because I'm pro-black. Nobody is supposed to be blamed for the things they did not do. And as a practicing Muslim, this is a part of my faith, so I'm not allowed to abandon that. No one is to be blamed for things they did not do. I hope that this helps. I mean that from the bottom of my black heart. And I hope that one day my little sermon right here in this recording is not even necessary anymore. In the meantime, I hope it helps you, and I hope it even helps people who think that you hate them and you don't. If anybody's listening, remember what I said before about what the solution is. If anybody's listening now, go and do a search. Go ahead and do a search on my channel and see what I said the solution is. And at that point, a lot of things will be answered. Thank you for listening. I'm out.